Today, we want to have an interesting conversation with one of my friends, Isaac Hadjyan. He has some good philosophies about the world, universe, nature of life, God, and religion.
You know, if you go to any person in the street, to any atheist, to any religious believer, you ask, are you part of the same nature? Are you part of one nature? You know, everybody agrees. We are part of one nature. So when you get atheists that say they don't believe in God, is they talking about, I don't believe the God that you say should be called upon.
Can you actually define God?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have the word God in dictionary, you can define it, right? So the word God can be defined, which means the one that's called upon, which means people pray to or called upon. But every person has its own definition.
No matter how you explain it, what philosophy you use, you can only get more refined and get closer to that experience, but you can never put it in words, obviously. When you realize yourself that your consciousness is where you can become free, because the nature of manifest universe is always changing, and the cause of suffering is not knowing your true nature, which is unchanging.
Where I do agree with you is when you have clarity, when you have consciousness, when you're awake, when you pay attention, you get rid of confusion, you see God clearly.
Really, the core of all religions actually talk about the same thing, but it gets very confusing and complicated, especially after the religious leaders, they interpret things their own way.
Punishment and reward is here. When you understand something with full adequate knowledge of God, you act with adequate knowledge of God, then you bring blessedness to yourself and don't need to wait for a punishment or a reward. When we want to take another person's right, that's when the mess happens. And we want to take another person's right, you know, we feel like my God is more superior and my God told me to. All those things they say, lack of adequate knowledge of God, because the true God has none of those things. So the idea of oneness is realizing that you're not in a constant battle against yourself, against God, against Satan. You're here to exist as part of a major existence, as a part of a major function.
Ultimately, to put it in a very simple way, you want to experience pleasantness, that heaven within yourself. And you can either get closer to that state of pleasantness or get further away from it.
Nothing in you needs to be condemned or destroyed. You need to understand yourself, be one with your nature, and transform your nature to the best of your potentials and ability.
Welcome, everybody, to the Greatness Glory podcast. Today, we want to have an interesting conversation with one of my friends, Isaac Hadjyan. He has good philosophies about the world, universe, nature of life, and God and religion. Welcome, Isaac. Another Isaac here.
Double Isaac today.
Let's start by asking you to introduce yourself, please, and tell me a little bit about your philosophy and your story.
Thank you, Isaac, and thank you for the invite. I'm glad you spell your name like I do, with double A's. So good, to describe good, we're going to give something that brings good and improves people's life. And about me, I've been in the U.S. for 20 years, about. I think we migrated at the same time even, or went to the same school for the audience information and background. I'm a father of 4. That's, I guess, my biggest accomplishment and pride in life, to be a father for my kids and be proud of them and learn from them. I have a gorgeous wife who's dedicated to me, and I'm dedicated to her, and we live a great life. And I'm a businessman. I don't have any formal education or any serious education, but I have, through my employees, children, and wife, I've learned a lot. Not a lot in the context of all the knowledge that there is, but enough to have my own philosophy and system, which is what I like to create, a system. And my system starts with God also. You know, in philosophy, you can either start by a philosophy on truth, a philosophy on God, and our philosophy definitely starts with God, and because that's all there is, and That's all we believe, that system of oneness. You know, if you go to any person in the street, to any atheist, to any religious believer, you ask, are you part of the same nature? Are you part of one nature? You know, everybody agrees. We are part of one nature. So when you get atheists that say they don't believe in God, is they talking about, I don't believe the God that you say should be called upon. But there is really nobody that ever believes they're not part of that one nature. And talking about giving something that's good, I believe that's that understanding, what we're going to talk about, how that one God, that being one part of one nature, is going to bring some blessedness.
So, speaking about God, let me ask you first, how do you actually define God? And second part of the question would be, can you actually define God?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have the word God in dictionary, you can define it, right? So the word God can be defined, which means the one that's called upon, which means people pray to or called upon. But every person has its own definition. Speaking in philosophy, rabbis like Maimonides or other religious philosophies, say you can't define God. You cannot define it. The way you understand God is by negation, by saying everything that God isn't. I think the philosophy might be prominent in Islam too. You have to say what God isn't to arrive at God. Many philosophies believe in that. To philosophers like Spinoza, Aristotle, which is way before Spinoza actually, yes, God can be defined. Existence is the nature of God. To give an answer that's combination of both, what we can see, to the extent that human can see, God can be defined and can be loved. But to the extent that we can see, because we can only define this room as much as we see it, but the parts that we don't see it, we can't define it. So we obviously can't define the entirety of God, but the parts of God that we see, i.e. reality, i.e. how God lives in nature, oneness of nature, yes, that we can define and we can even love.
That's a very good explanation, very close to my philosophy as well. And I don't follow any specific tradition exclusively, but I'm a fan of Hindu Vedantic traditions, where almost in all diverse Indian systems of cosmology and theology, they also say the same thing, that God has two aspects. One is the formless God, and another aspect is the manifested God. And you can know the qualities of God that exist in all religions. In Judaism and Islam, there are names of God and qualities that is associated with them. And when it is about knowing God in terms of experiencing the God nature within, which is an aspect of yourself, they also have the same concept where it's called neti neti, which means not this, not this. Basically, it means you can know God by negation, actually. So I agree with you on that one.
But how do you know God from your body and your eternal existence? Let me answer and then you can counter that. To me, your essence of existence, many philosophies try to describe God from design. God must be a great architect, or God must be a creator that creates by will and, he planned it and then he executed. There are several flaws with that because not everything that's created is perfect. And then evidently we see from nature that God doesn't create based on an architectural plan. Rather, things are evolving. They're learning to exist. They're developing. We're all growing together. God creates the conditions of things. But to think that God is planning the events that occur, that's where it causes the issue. So to believe God as a designer, yes, you can see there is intellect in the universe. Things operate by some sort of intellectual and lawful order. But to think that God builds like an architect or a construction man, that is not true. So our proof for existence of God is from existence itself. You and I are amazed by existence, the very fact that we exist. We say, because I exist, there is existence. We are amazed at that. Why do I exist? And a lot of people confuse existence with life. Life is a form of existence, right?
Okay.
Right? Life is not all of existence. If I die, my body doesn't cease to exist. My body returns to soil. I'm still existing. My body is still existing till it changes form. So life is not all of existence. We are not amazed by life. Even if there was no life, we would still believe in God. We are amazed by existence. How does reality occur to begin with? Not the order, not the design, not the intellect. No, the fact that something exists tells me that there is eternal existence. So the pasuk says, I'll see from my body God. How do I see from my body God? Not from the design. The very fact that I'm a form, that I exist, that these things are holding together. Even from stone. Oh, but stone is a mundane, doesn't have any higher status of creation. Nobody cares. To you, it's mundane. To somebody that contemplates, that stone is amazing. How does it exist? There must be eternal existence. So that's what we see from our body and from our eternity, very materialistically, not from the design, not from my intellect, not how I put words together. All that we can attribute to process of God or evolution. But the one thing we cannot attribute to a mundane thing is existence itself. Anything that exists is evidence of God. How do you see from your body or soul God?
How I see it and the way that it's explained in the Eastern traditions is, as I said, that God has different aspects. And first of all, no matter how you explain it, what philosophy you use, you can only get more refined and get closer to that experience, but you can never put it in words, obviously. The way that Eastern traditions have explained this, to make it simple, is that there is an aspect of God which is transcendental. You cannot even talk about it. And there is an aspect of God which is commonly explained as consciousness, pure consciousness. Sometimes it is explained as the witness of all things, because it's beyond everything that is with form and can be experienced objectively. Like this microphone, I can touch it objectively. But the God that is talked about is not something that you can objectively interact with, even though there are forms of God which are still God, but a different aspect of God. Not that God that you can realize as the transcendental nature. So when we say God in a way is consciousness, is because when your body stops, let's say, or you're very calm in a very deep state of meditation, and then even you don't have much thoughts, in that silence, you experience yourself as something which I want to define it, then again we get away from it, but we can say it's pure consciousness. So there is a consciousness which itself cannot be defined and explained. Again, it becomes an object if we explain it, but because it is above everything and it witnesses everything, we can say that when we know our own consciousness, and even saying we know our own consciousness is wrong, because the consciousness is what knows everything. When you realize yourself that your consciousness is where you can become free, because the nature of manifest universe is always changing. And the cause of suffering is not knowing your true nature, which is unchanging, and being swayed by the experiences, the experience of the senses that we experience, the material life, this dimension, and attaching to things. And basically, the philosophy of so many traditions, fundamental part of Hindu, Vedantic, Tantric, Buddhist tradition is that we basically suffer for two things, which is liking and disliking. You like something and you dislike something. You like something, you have a greed, you have attachment, you want to get it, you don't get it, you're unhappy. And then you have something that you want to avoid, you keep pushing it away and you suffer. So one of the meanings of meditation is to get to that state of non-reactiveness, pure witness. So when you stop going outside of yourself, when you stop reacting, then you naturally come back to your real nature. And the message of almost all religions is one who knows himself knows God. But obviously, when you say knowing yourself, you're not talking about knowing the body and the organs of body, but what is beyond all these things.
So let me give you a rebuttal. I agree with part of what you say, but I believe you're making the same path as the religions. You separate consciousness from the material, and you give a higher degree of perfection to consciousness. So you have a two-system world. You have the material world, and you have the immaterial world. You have the mundane world, and you have the holy world. To me, that's not to have anything because you're a very peaceful person, but that philosophy where we have learned to separate things into mundane, elite, not elite, is the cause of all unpeacefulness in the world. Traditionally, they had a question, a very good question that has always existed. If material things are physical, then God cannot be a physical thing, because then it's subject to dimensions, and then it's subject to being finite, right? So they had to separate the two. They had to say God is pure form, God is zero material, and then spits out matter for some reason. Aristotle would say the 10 spheres. You have it in the Kabbalah, the 10 Sefirot, Esther Sefirot, or you have it in Plato, where he had some what we consider heretic idea that matter always existed aside from God, and God manipulated matter to create the universe. But a better oneness understanding is that God is eternal existence and always emanating matter and thought and always developing different attributes. So that microphone is not wholly mundane just because it doesn't have consciousness. Your organs of body are not any separate organ than when your thought is from. Where I do agree with you is when you have clarity, when you have consciousness, when you're awake, when you pay attention, you get rid of confusion, you see God clearly. You're one with God. You're in oneness. You're in that unity, the basket of unity we want to talk about. That oneness, that nothing in me, in the universe, on the earth, is from a different source. It's all one origin, whether it's my thought or my limbs, it's all one origin. True, some of them have better function, more value to me, more value to get me closer to be mindful of the origin or have control over the suffering you talk about, wanting too much. Oh, I want something, I didn't get it. Well, if you have consciousness about that, if you have awareness that God is the only eternal thing, and we are all immutable and changeable and destined to death, then maybe it's not that big of a deal. Then you always put God in your mind. Shiviti Adonai Lenegdi Tamid. You know, in the synagogues, they have that all across. That's a great principle to have. You put God always in front of you. That means God is eternal. My suffering is not. My desire is not. It's all part of my confusion because I'm built of multiple systems, multiple. You taught me about the reptilian brain and the brain that can override all these complexities that have developed over time. But the underlying is what I understand, eternal nature. And the more I connect to that eternal nature, the more I understand I'm part of it, the more I reduce my suffering.
Actually, I don't disagree with what you say. It's just different ways to explaining, and that these conversations are actually the ground for clarifying these things. And one thing I realized since age of 15, when I suddenly started questioning the existence and seeking spiritual knowledge, that really the core of all religions actually talk about the same thing, but it gets very confusing and complicated, especially after the religious leaders, they interpret things their own way, let alone if the texts were modified or whatever else. But the existence in terms of the changing nature of the existence is also God, speaking from the Vedantic philosophy, because we call in the Hindu traditions, very famous concept, the nature as Maya, which can be loosely translated as the cosmic illusion. That is also God, but is another aspect of God, the changing aspect of God. So when we talk about becoming free, we're talking about transcending to that aspect of God within us that is unchanging.
Very nice. Very nice. I like that a lot because God is infinite, because not only in duration, because time is constructed, obviously, God is infinite beyond time, but is also beyond power. It never runs out of it. And something that's infinite has infinite attributes. You know, the more beautiful a building is, the more ways there is to get to it, the more attributes it has. That's what makes it beautiful. What makes reality the reality it is? All the infinite possibilities that God is constantly expressing. Another philosophical concept, God holds no potential. You know, this is a big topic in philosophy. There is no state of potential for God. Because if you say God, there is a state of potential, it's holding itself back. It's governed by something else that it has to pause itself, and it's not expressing itself. So God is always expressing itself. The reason a gazillionth of things don't exist is because they haven't come to possibility yet. As you indicated, it's all natural process. It's not, you know, if I can add this on. In Arabic, there are two words. Everybody knows about it. Inshallah and mashallah, right? What does the word shah means? Will, God's will. Also shay, which means a thing. So first of all, they call a thing a shay because everything is created by will. So this is a shay because God has shot it, has willed it to be in existence, right? So they say mashallah when they want to say, oh, I have this, like, don't put evil eye on it, which means what? So has willed God. Meaning, don't be jealous of my business. So has willed God. And when they say, inshallah, like when they want to promise something, they say, if so wills God. Meaning, don't put all the responsibility on me. You know, God has to will it. So everything is God's will in Jewish philosophy, in Muslim philosophy, Christian philosophy, to the extent that we know it, and to the extent that majority of people think it. Everything is created by will, by God's word. Oh, if so, why God hasn't created everything that's possible? Why doesn't God hasn't expressed all of his potential? Because God doesn't create by will. God exists through a natural, very precise process that it's figuring itself out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you continue and then I'll.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, even though I cannot say experientially I can know this, but I know from the Vedic philosophy that the same thing that you're saying is also true, where everything is God's will, everything is manifestation of God, including me and you and the stone. And my question to you is, some of these philosophies actually say that there is no really individual will, it's an illusion. And maybe objectively, from my experience talking, you look at it, you think you're doing things or you are the doer, but really everything is God's will, even to the extent that saying why this person is getting enlightened or getting to some spiritual height or whatever. They say if God wants to awaken in one person, God decides to awaken. But I personally, even though spiritually, deeply, I might agree with this, I want to say, in a way, the consciousness within us, if it's God, if we are aligned with it, then we grow more. Just to say that maybe we have some free will, but it's not in terms of deviating from the only will, which is God's will, but it is a limited version of that will maybe that is within us, and we can only either deviate from that will and suffer or become aligned with
Is
it.
this your philosophy or are you explaining?
I am explaining it in my own way of understanding. What do you think about this?
I think you're right. You actually are right more than most people, even more than more religion, because the religion believe the free will is an entity that's, oh, human have free will. They're a kingdom within kingdom. They're above nature and they're the top of nature because they have free will. And they are like God because God has free will and human have free will. That's a really good point, and they attribute that to the neshama or the soul. The soul makes all the decision. But such a thing doesn't exist. The will is not free. We become aware of the decisions that our brain make a few milliseconds after the brain makes them. The body is informing us that there is a decision occurring. Now, through feeding information, through interoception, through contemplation, through trial and error, through pain and pleasure, I can modify my decisions. But in no case, the will is free. When you say something is free, this microphone is free, it's not standing on anything, you know? It's maybe hanging from the air, best case. The will is not hanging from the air. The will is not a power God gave you separately. You know, a chicken has a preference too. You give it grains, water, it can make a decision what it goes. We're taking our preference and the fact that our body can make decisions and controls over certain aspects. Our breathing is not voluntary. Some other things are voluntary. But those are not free. They are dependent on our brain, thalamus, all the components that make the decision, all the components of desire, the energy that we have. If you have lack of energy, I don't know, you're hungry or your gut microbes or bacteria are malfunctioning or your chemicals of the brain malfunction, where the hell is freedom in the will? I don't deny there is will. There is will, but it's not free. And the more we know that our will, I did this because I wanted this. And, you know, people always make a decision, then they make their moral reasoning behind it. And they attribute their decision to whatever moral reason they thought to lift their own soul and status up. No, you made the decision because your body told you to make the decision. And the more you know that your body is in control of you, the more you know you need knowledge, you need practice, you need interception to change that will. Everything that it's in us is part of God, whether it's the body, the intellect. But is God telling me to do this and that? No, it's part of God's process and condition that telling you that. And the more you're able to add information, gather God's perfection in you, the more adequate knowledge of God is the term. The more adequate knowledge of God you get, you see things through eternal existence. And that's why it's important to define God. If we say we can't define God, why are you concerned with it? Don't even talk about it. Go talk about things you can't define. But the more we have adequate knowledge of God, that is the eternal existence. That is one truth that we always hold dear to our heart. The one truth that there is something eternally exists. And we connect to that, the more of godliness we have. So it's not that we are made out of God or not. We are always made out of God. We are part of God. We are functioning by God's condition. We are functioning by God's nature. We are not another kingdom in kingdom. Screw your free will. You cannot override God with your free will. God will not punish you for your free will or lack of thereof. Punishment and reward is here. When you understand something with full adequate knowledge of God, you act with adequate knowledge of God, then you bring blessedness to yourself and don't need to wait for a punishment or a reward.
What is the adequate knowledge of God in practicality?
That's a great question. So confusion is not knowing things. Adequate knowledge is knowing things with certainty. So let's speak about truth. How can you arrive at truth? And then I answer that. There are 4 ways in Spinoza you can arrive truth. One is hearsay knowledge. Hearsay is my father told me, my parents told me, my rabbi said so, my priest said so, somebody told me so. Or you have 4 beings. Somebody told me that 2 beings plus 2 beings is 4. Or somebody told me that the earth is not round. I take them for scientists said. Science says the earth is not round. I take it for their word. That's hearsay knowledge. That's the lowest type of knowledge you can have. Even when it comes to science, because science these days is paid for. And manufacturing, a lab, or, you know, they get paid to produce the reports for the intentions you want. So all hearsay knowledge, lowest card of knowledge. Then is random experience. You know, I happened to see someone put 2 and 2 together. It came 4. I didn't contemplate on it. I know 2 plus 2 is 4. Or I saw a boat disappearing on the ocean, even with the binoculars, and I realized that I can't see it further, therefore the earth is curved. Or another way you get to it is rational reasoning, right? You get geometry, you calculate the dimensions, however they do it, you say the earth must be round. That's a level higher, but that's not the highest level. The highest level in Spinoza is intuitive knowledge. That is that you understand why earth is sphere, the reason it's round, is because things under the mass of gravity, they get that form, and you see it. And not only you heard it from someone, or you experienced it, or you saw it, or it happened 10 times, rather you deeply understand it, as good as you understand that I have 10 fingers, or that there is a table here. And those are the best truths you can say in life, because you're not lying when you say them. When you say this table is here, it's a fact. There is no, you intuitively understand that something exists, you affirm its existence, you describe in reality as good as you can. It's like Descartes said, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. People say, oh, if he didn't think, he didn't know he is. That's not what he means. He says, evidence that I exist is the fact that I can think, because I understand what existence is, and then I can intuitively understand that I'm thinking. Therefore, my thinking tells me that it's not a dream, that I exist. Same thing with us. We exist, we know God exists. We know that something eternal must exist. That is the truest thing you can say. Doesn't need no proof that I'm anywhere. You know, I see myself existing. I see I'm a part of nature. Everybody knows this. It's such a simple truth. Why is it not known? Because it's covered by confusion. It's covered by years of saying, you are holier. No, you're holier. No, our religion can do it better. No, we pray 5 times a day. No, we're going to do 30 days. Just topping one another off. And, oh, therefore you're making God sad if you do this. You're making God angry. Then we cover God. Then we cover that oneness of nature, that we were all part of that existence. It's all covered in dust. So when we say adequate knowledge of God, get rid of the confusion. Listen to yourself. Contemplate on yourself. You can see something exists. You can see something eternal exists. You can ask any animal. They know they're part of nature. They know they're part of a system. So that's what I say, adequate knowledge of God. And the highest truth is that, and the way you can know truth is intuitive truth.
That aligns actually very well with the teachings of Buddha, who is known to be as one of the most enlightened, very interesting.
I look like Buddha too.
Actually, that's not Buddha, that's another personality.
Oh, the big one you see
everybody
in the nail salons?
Makes mistake thinking that Buddha, but anyways.
Who's that?
That's a Chinese god of prosperity or something like that.
With the candies, with the chocolate. And
yeah. Anyways, Buddha actually, when he became enlightened, came up with the same teaching and said that there are 3 types of knowledge. One is the secondhand knowledge that you just hear and learn, and it might not mean anything to you because it's just like somebody else's experience. And the second type of knowledge is where you deeply contemplate, which we can say it's philosophy in a way, and you come to some deeper understanding of the concepts. But then he said the third type of knowledge, which is the only type of knowledge which can make you free, is the experiential knowledge, the type of knowledge that you acquire by deep contemplation and meditation on your existential nature, getting to know the deepest aspects of yourself and see how mind works, how it creates suffering, how you can become free from the play of the thoughts and all things of that nature. So I agree with you on that one. It's a good one. I don't know. Spinoza was much later than Buddha. Maybe he
absolutely
Buddha
was inspired by, is it Chinese philosophy or?
Well, Buddha was Indian. Yeah. But
I believe that he was inspired by Indian philosophy. So by Maimonides and so by many other.
My next question is, why on earth there is so many fights and arguments and conflicts about God in different religions, and why is it that people are so, I can say, hypnotized, brainwashed, that they cannot even question to get to a deeper type of knowledge.
So I already made the bold claim that everybody believes in God because they all believe they're part of one nature.
If you put it that way, yeah.
Yes, correct. But if you say they all believe in the God you pray to, that's a false statement. But if you say everybody intuitively knows they are part of one nature, that is the truth. I'm going to make a second claim that everybody loves God. My proof is everybody loves love. Everybody loves loving, connecting, becoming greater. Your podcast name is Greatness Glory. We love greatness. We love becoming great again, right? We love becoming more powerful. We love loving one another. We love connections. We all want to become like God. We want to be that great entity that is, and everything in nature. They consolidate. They all want to express God. Not that they all don't want to be poetic, which is not true, but everything is expressing God. Because in essence, everything is God. And God loves itself.
I agree with you.
Right? But poetically saying it, everything wants to become like God. Yeah. We want to become like God. What happens is the lack of adequate knowledge of God, the confusion. We have that urge that's intuitive in us. We want to become greater, but we think that gambling makes me greater. We think that taking someone else's territory makes me greater. To me, all the fights in the universe is about existence. You need the resources. Russia, Ukraine, they're fighting over resources. It's not about, there's phosphor there's lithium, there's all kind of minerals. That's what's going on. We eventually going to run out of the oil, the water, and the resource of the earth. And we feel like they taking my place and I need it for my survival. So I would say lack of adequate knowledge of God. If we see we are all part of one nature, the golden rule of all religions, why is it such an important lesson? What you hate on yourself, don't do to your friend. Because in my opinion, they all believe that we are all part of one nature. Therefore, if you know that and you know that you have the same right to nature as somebody that has equal status as you, equal human in the order of the universe, then yeah, we understand that. I don't want to say, we all have equal rights, then you have to explain how you slaughter a chicken, because we all don't have equal rights. Some of us have a higher status of existence. Humans have dominion over animals, but that gives us a responsibility, not a right to torture them. Nature has ordained it so that I can raise chickens, and it is possible, and I gotta do it responsibly. But yeah, as far as it comes to other humans, we have to recognize that we have equal rights, and when we want to take another person's right, that's when the mess happens. And we want to take another person's right. We feel like my God is more superior, and my God told me to. All those things they say, lack of adequate knowledge of God, because the true God has none of those in it.
But some people will argue that our religion is the most accurate way to define existence and God. And then I repeat my question again, which I said a minute ago, that do you think a lot of people that you have interacted with, obviously, when they are very, very sure of themselves, they have a firm faith that what I think is correct, even though it can be correct, but you have misunderstood it, but still they say, my understanding is correct.
But is that Bernard Russell that says the problems of the world is you completed that?
Yes,
stupid people are sure of themselves and intelligent are
exactly
unsure. But you will never find a leader that could say, I think maybe this route is correct. A philosopher is never suited for the White House or for leadership. You can't sit there and contemplate, I'm not sure which way we should take. No, you have to give direction. You have to be a leader, and you have to know to believe in what you're gonna do. So yes, but in the philosophy, when it comes to leave some room for error. Yeah, we don't know. Don't be afraid to say we don't know. That's true. We gotta say we don't know a lot more often.
But why are people, especially people who follow organized religions, Abrahamic religions, and so on, have a very hard time to even being open to different ways of thinking?
I think self-worth in our culture, or just human culture, not specific culture, is taught through comparison. You are good, they are not good. You know, you are better than them, or you're a yeshiva student, you're better than everybody that's in the street. You're a clergyman, you're studying this. No, these are all falsity and natural desires that evolution have given us to protect ourselves and to survive. You know, you have to be selfish to survive. It's mandatory. You have to be first. If you put everyone else first, you're never going to survive. So those of us that have survived have learned a degree of selfishness. The problem is when we take that selfishness and apply it across the board and disconnect from the truth. Yes, I have to take care of myself first, but that doesn't mean I have to create a philosophy that puts other people down in order to elevate myself.
Can we say fundamentally a lot of people that have a hard time questioning things, it is because...
Is it scary?
Yes, and then they were misguided by some misguided religious leaders that have told them, the God that I introduced to you wants you to believe in him without questioning, and anything that is written in this book is true. Yeah. So basically, is it because of fear mainly that people don't even want to question? Because I have seen this a lot of times, that people came to me at one point. I had a class, I was teaching something years ago, and I was talking about some things that it even had barely anything to question anybody's belief. Like, let's say, you know, I can tell somebody, if you do breath awareness meditation, it does this and this to you. And then a lot of people will say, oh, you want to become a Buddhist because Buddha taught breath awareness. Even some Hindus think if somebody is going and doing that type of meditation, now he becomes a Buddhist. So,
yeah, well, absolutely. Let me just start by saying religion has a definite function, and it's not seeking truth. And this endeavor to seek truth is not for everybody. Not everybody deserves it, actually. So, what is the function of religion? To me, the most important thing religion does, it's a framework that's been tested, and it's a package, it's a kit that you can give to someone and say, run your family, run your life with it, and live your life with it. To me, when I see new synagogues, new churches, new mosques going up, I'm not upset about it. I'm happy. There's community. People have something to do. You know, if you don't have a community, like maybe you or myself, what do we do? Who's our community, man? So that's really important, having that community. And the way religion has been able to carry those is through those things that look weird when we do it, like wash your hands like this, or say it like this, recite it like this, or if you do it like this is canceled, or it's haram, or it's not kosher. All those, even superstitious stuff, help carry the system along, because without those traditions, the system and the teachings would get lost. So religion has been absolutely successful in turning beasts into men. You know, even your biggest atheists here, like Yuval Noah Harari, would admit that religion had a major function in turning apes into humans that could well behave. You look at the era of kingdoms, Jewish kingdoms, they didn't have sophisticated policing systems and governments. It's a beginning civilization. What do? Religion is there to make sure you don't screw someone else's wife. You don't take someone else's money. You're honest. Mm-hmm. You look around, you see a lot of things that we feel like religion is doing, but on the contrary, religion is there to support them through marriage, through divorce, through death, through childbirth, through agony, through pain. What system can you offer to people that's so comprehensive, aside from religion, aside from the benefit of the community that it gives? So the path of truth is separate than religion. If you want to seek truth, do what you do. If you want community, it's religion. So what were you talking about?
So
part of religion, or why does religion teach people that? I think like any system that has to survive itself, they have to say, yeah, they could come out and say, we have a great system for life. Some of it might be absolutely from God. Some of it may not be. Nobody would buy that. They have to put up a system that's so attractive to every man, woman, every simple person that's not sought truth. Because what you're thinking about, let me feel good from within, not from comparative worth. I think that's an elevated woke idea that you have to be conscious of, that your satisfaction doesn't come from self-worth and thinking that God has endorsed you or put a stamp on you, rather comes by your merit. Your good comes from your merit, what you do every day to be a better person.
Well, that brings me to the next question, which is all related. You are saying that religion, and I believe most religions, because some religions are very different in terms of being more aligned with truth, you can say that religion might be a good system for managing mundane things of life or giving people some purpose or some confidence.
Not mundane. It's all of life. What else is in life beside those things that you and I?
Well, for me, the way that I see it,
you're like a secret rabbi. Sports, no, not all rabbis, but some people will go out there.
No, the way that I see it, I say, you can say, of course, that everything mundane is also divine. Yes, I have not get to that stage of my spiritual realization to really experience everything as divine, and so many people have gotten there in history, and I hope I can get there. But let's say you're saying religion can be a system for managing your society and life. But what if there are beliefs in that religion that obviously you will agree with me that if there are some harmful beliefs that will be harmful to other people, somebody wants to blow himself up, or somebody thinks that we are the only people that are chosen by God and everybody else is animal or whatever else, even if we're not talking about those extreme conditions, we're talking about the cosmology, the way that the religion explains things. What if that way of explaining things is fundamentally distorted and pushes you away from the truth? Is it still good? I don't see it as a good thing if a system comes and really distorts your path with something which is hallucination, some sort of really wrong thing.
In the groups of Jewish, Muslim, Christians I haven't seen extremism. I haven't seen people say, even when the text of the Bible says eye for an eye, they have come to really evolve and say, doesn't mean eye, it means the money for the eye.
But not everybody thinks
not
like
everybody.
that.
So let's talk about extremism. But before I do, in every group, you have great Jews, great Muslims, great Christians. You can close your business, give it to them. Not that I advocate for not verifying and trusting or having systems for trusting, but there are people you can turn over your life and just close your eyes and I can trust you. You're one of the people I really trust. But when you see someone is devoted, they have awareness, they're a good person, you can trust them. To many people, religion has brought them to that. Is there extremism? Yeah, but extreme conditions, when you become abnormal, again, I'm going to revert to that. It's not a free will that you have decided, I have decided to become an extremist. No, the conditions in your life cause you to become an extremist, cause you to have anger. The outlet became the religion. You found some text, and through that, you allowed yourself, through that path, you allowed yourself to do. So every belief, even the beliefs that I hold, I don't say that. The beliefs that I hold are all refined and have nothing to do with my nature and are purely intellect. No, the conditions of my life, being the second child, from the moment of you're born, everything that happens in your life, the good that you go through, the trauma that you go through, the status that you need to feel, your body has 1,000,001 reason why you believe into something before you're aware of why you believed in it. So somebody's extremist, angry, that exists in them because of the condition of life. This is bringing it out.
Yeah. What I was saying, fundamentally, I mean, even if those systems of religions, they offer some systems for people to manage a society and whatever, as a spiritual seeker and a seeker of truth, I think if there is a distortion of truth, if the truth is misrepresented by saying something like the other religions are all false, and the only way to approach God is this, Or a Christian might come and say, the only way to get to God is Jesus. And these are what I call limiting perception of the truth. I think, as you said, seeking truth is not for everybody. Maybe those people are not really after truth, which they're not actually. If somebody is a truth seeker, he would question things, not to follow the blind belief of other people or religious leader or mullah or somebody who taught you. I'm just saying, I think when the truth is distorted and misrepresented, then it pushes you more away from knowing yourself.
100%, yeah. If you disconnect from reality, to me, it's like death. That's why, to me, like saying the truth is the most important thing in absence of religion. The only way you're connected to life or reality is by speaking the truth. The moment you lie to the mirror, not only you have fooled yourself, but you have also disconnected from reality, existence, which in our opinion, we have said that it's God. So yeah, lying is terrible and shouldn't happen if you want to be a philosopher or love God and knowledge. But I throw this at you from, I think it's Schopenhauer, that says that truth is not a little harlot or prostitute that will throw itself at you. It's like a virgin lady. You have to beg it. You have to be very gentle with it, and you have to toil for it to reveal yourself to you.
If somebody is not following any of those organized religions, seeking the truth, how can it help for that person to evolve, like not lie and be a better person and evolve?
Very good. So religion has taught us good, wrong or right, correct or incorrect. And, you know, sometimes I speak to my married friends, and I think that's a perfect example. They say, oh, if I wasn't married, you know the things I would do? I would say, no, I don't know what you would do, because marriage has its own good and beauty. You're not faithful to your partner because of religion. You're faithful to your partner because a good marriage, a union, nourishes you and it thrives you. So yeah, religion teaches right, wrong. But good and bad, we can define good and bad. Stealing is bad because then it creates disorder in society. You can steal my things, I steal your things. I live with sort of a pain or guilt or troubled conscience, can't sleep well at night. So you can define good and bad very easily. Being peaceful is good. Problem of religion is it has taught us to judge things based on right or wrong. While we're bashing religion, let me really pick a deep subject with religion. To me, the biggest problem with religion is disconnection from God. Many religions are not connecting us to God. Judaism, the word for God is Yud He Vav He, Yahweh. Tetragrammaton, right, which you cannot say it. After the temple, the rabbis prohibited that name. You can't say it unless, you can't even say it. You never say it. You always say the word Adonai, which means my master. Or you call it Hashem, right? Or you call it Elohim. The word Yud He Vav He, from Havaya, to be, existence, exactly what we've been talking about the past hour. The Torah starts by introducing God as existence. Later, the rabbi come and say, call it my master, Adonai. Do not read it as existence. This word is prohibited unless in the temple. Meanwhile, what we are saying is, know of God, say its name. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. Put Yahweh in front of you at all times. To know that you're part of that one existence. To know that there is only one eternal thing and everything else is striving toward that eternal thing. So where they get caught is in the Psalms, it writes sometimes Adonai, and then writes Havaya, Yud He Vav He, the Yahweh. So the rabbis will have to read Adonai, Adonai twice, right? So they made a new invention. The second one is called Elohim, the judges. But to me, the Bible was right on. Yud He Vav He, you know, yeah, God to be, to exist, existence. If we know God like that, I think that's the number one thing. Not only they don't spell God's name, you know, they put a little dash in the middle. Sometimes you see they put GD, or they don't say God's name. Why? Why? God doesn't need your service. You need God's awareness. You need to be mindful of God. And you separate God. You put God in the temple, close it, open it only when they buy a few $1,000s on the thing, or they pay it. Then you open God, you can talk to God, bring God out. Why you did that? Why you put it in the temple and took God out of people's heart and mind?
Yeah.
And instead put God's fear in people's mind and heart, and gave people the responsibility of making God happy or sad or angry or pleasure God. And you ruined a relationship that was supposed to be loving, and I could love you, I can strive from you, I can be like you, has become that I'm going to serve you and I'm nothing. And I might anger you and I have to apologize to you when I anger you because I have free will. So that to me, that is the disconnect between religion and God. Not only Judaism. I speak about Judaism because I know Judaism the most. Every other religion, God you serve it, Islam, you're obedient to the will of God. So that would say it's my biggest problem. But I'll speak about obedient also, because in our religion, yours, mine, the one that we believe God is everything, obedient is also important. We are obedient to the law of nature, to the rule of nature, right? We know nature has allowed us to change some things, but when it's beyond our will to change it, we don't say, oh, God, please change the course of nature for me. We are obedient. We are more obedient than religions. We never tell God how to run nature or what to do or what not to do. That obedience is a bigger element of our religion.
So, Isaac, we were talking about the path to truth and the distortions that have happened in religions. And I believe the core of all religions is true. If I learned one thing by extensively studied many religions in depth, is this one thing, and whether what happened later that the truth of that religion was misrepresented. Because originally the religions were supposed to be a path to realization. And speaking of Judaism, when you see the story that, for example, Moses goes on the top of the Mount Sinai and asks God, who are you? And God says, I am that I am. And to me, that is the deepest teaching of all the Eastern religions, that God is that I am in you, that isness, that existence. And in fact, one of the very famous...
That's where the name Yud Heh is from. Yeah, sure. Yeah, what you just said.
Correct.
I am that I am, yeah.
Yeah, and to me, one of the most profound ways that Hindu systems have explained God in Sanskrit say that God is Sat Chit Ananda, which means the nature of God is existence, consciousness, and bliss. And this is even explained in a way objectively. That means the more you get closer to God, the more you experience yourself as pure existence, as consciousness, and you become blissful. You experience the love.
I like that, yeah.
Where did this distortion started? Like how it happened? Where we are giving the example of Judaism for now, because me and you were born Jewish and we know a lot of things about it, and you're an expert on Judaism also. Where did this distortion begin?
The distortion began with existence of human. Since there have been human that have awareness and have desires and have pulls from multiple different directions, and the brain is it's not a simple reptilian brain. It has multiple layers. It can see things in different conditions and understand things in different ways. Imagination, since we have imagination, one of our most supreme tools over animals, I don't think they imagine like, oh, what are we going to do? They don't imagine that far away of what if I had that car or I had this building. Existence is very simple when you have not so complex brain. Attributed to the complex brain that we have, attributed to the complex brain that humans have, it could cause confusion because nature has gifted us imagination. A side effect of it is confusion. Let's talk about this also. A lot of people believe that evil exists. Evil is by Satan or God's counterpart. I don't know what's your view. You make sure you tell me about it. But to me, evil is lack of adequate knowledge of God, is confusion, is when you have the imagination making up stuff in your mind and diverting you from the course of abnormality. So somebody might ask me, the animals that eat one another, is it evil? I don't think it is evil. You know, nature consolidates with itself. It's nature eating nature. It's part of God's process. I don't have a thing in it. I'm not there to judge. My concern is with human evil. We have understanding, we have imaginations, we have the tool that nature or God have assembled for us. And God also has given us the tools to understand and comprehend and to contemplate. And we have to use all these tools. And we don't need an independent source to tell us what's wrong, what's right. We have our good and bad that we can immediately and intuitively understand.
So going back to the story of Satan and Shaitan and whatever hell that is, oh my God, I think Satan is coming to get me tonight. I'm being disrespectful to it. I'm kidding.
Just say Allahu Akbar. What did I say to get rid of?
Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Okay, I think
a tsunami might be coming to LA now.
Yeah. I think we discussed this, Isaac, that the fundamental belief that there is a devil or somebody that is against God and is sitting there to tempt you to do evil things and is going against God's will and playing all the evil things, is that flawed or not? Because when I think about it, if we say God is the ruler of whole universe and everything is God's will, if Adam and Eve were in the Eden or wherever they were, and then suddenly somebody came and then tempted them and they were kicked out of heaven, which to me, that story is very symbolic. The heaven is the state of oneness with God and lack of duality, the real wisdom. If that philosophy is true, then God is not omnipresent and omniscient because somebody outside of the God came and started all the evil.
Right. So, yeah, that's why I say evil cannot exist as a separate part of God. There are other components of the universe or matter in the universe that are eternal, but they are also part of God. Exactly what I said. It will only exist because human have emotions, imaginations, and confusion. When you put the three together, evil exists. But when you go to the world of galaxies and planets and stars, what evil is there? There is no emotion, there is no feeling. It's all God's process consolidating and merging with itself or destroying itself and rebuilding itself. It's only for the human, and it's only for human that we have that responsibility of separating ourselves from evil.
What do you think about other dimensions of existence, spiritual dimensions, subtle dimensions, and afterlife?
In my understanding, I'm not concerned with things I can't see. So dimensions I can't see, I'm not concerned with it. Afterlife could be not. I don't have a way of knowing it. I'm not concerned with it. You know, there's a Persian poetry, if I can recall it. Jami و بتی و بربتی این سه مرا نقد و تو را نسیه بهش. Give me a cup, give me a river of water, and give me my beloved. I'll take these three cash payment from you, and you can take heaven on deposit. To me, God gave us this life. I'm aware of this life. Why should I not be concerned with this one and be concerned with something I do not know? When you look at Jewish texts, I didn't find it in the Bible. I didn't find it in the Old Testament that he talked about heaven and hell. I believe the rabbis had to make that to compete with Christians. They had heaven. What are we going to do? Oy vey. Christianity is offering heaven. 2 lives. Okay, so in our philosophy, must be that something like that exists too. I could be wrong because the idea of heaven and hell could predate Christianity in the Talmud, which actually is. But the Torah never once spoke about such a thing. I don't know where it came from. It came from somewhere else. The Torah never said, keep Shabbat, because if not, I'm going to destroy you in heaven. The Torah spoke about Shabbat and spoke about your life flourishing and I'll bless your work. And I think that's a beautiful lesson. You don't need to tell people that they're going to go to heaven or hell. Maybe some people don't observe it if you don't make it that exciting. Tell people it's good to sit down with your family, put your phones away, get along with each other under any circumstances. Get along with each other once a week. Sit down, have a meal, repair all the broken bridges, because family is your support. I can carry this extension of logic across the Torah. I don't care if God dictated Moses or the people that wrote it were divine. I find a lot of laws in there that are meant to sustain humanity. Familial relationship, incest. Family is your support. You don't mess with that. You know, coming from beasts that used to marry their own family, how do we get them out of those things with the 10 Commandments? It's like a rope pulling people out of the dungeon, you know, bring them to light. May not be 100% light as you would want to imagine, but you're further along in the chain of evolution. Take it back a few thousand years, we were not so civilized. We needed the help. Even today, a lot of things, Shabbat, kosher, it teaches you don't eat everything, you know? Some people come and take the kosher law or the halal law and think God has given us authority over our animal and now we can slaughter them or keep them in the farms or how. No, listen to the Torah. It also talks about Tsar Balachaim, not torturing animals. So people use the components they want to give themselves authority. But really, there's a lot of good parts in there that you can pay attention. Family law, kosher, again, teach yourself what goes into your mouth has to have some sort of, you have some sort of value for yourself. You're not a vacuum. Teach that to your kids, you know. You can't just eat any crawling animal, even for health reasons. Have some control, have some restriction, have some principles. You and I know a lot about principle and discipline because we know about religion. Religion teaches us discipline, you know, teaches us that we are not beasts, that we have some value. So all of those are there. The logic I use for Shabbat, that it's good for your family. You can take it across, you know, the 613, 50% of it, you can easily see how this law is improving society, improving your family, or improving your individuality. Even the things that the rabbis teach or the clergies teach is not all a distortion of the truth. They're not always, you know, sitting, they're always teaching stuff for your own growth, for your community growth. So that's what I would say. Distortion, yes, does happen. But is there valuable lessons? You know it and I know it that there is.
What I understand from what you're saying is that we need the power of discrimination and using our brains more. And that's my philosophy too. I don't see any one system as fully bad, but people need to learn to discriminate and take what's good and leave what doesn't resonate.
You mean like
and
filter?
Yes. You agree with that?
But what is the filter? What do you call the filter? How do you create the filter?
Well, if I want to explain on that,
I'll explain it. My filter is adequate knowledge. Is this something that I could understand intuitively and through the chain of cause of existence from the beginning of the universe and through the intuitive understandings that I have? Is what you're saying, is it a hearsay knowledge? Is it something you have by experience that you saw one time, you saw somewhere happen? Or is that something you deduce by reasoning? Or is that something that I can also intuitively understand through prior intuitive knowledge that I have?
Well, if we use knowledge as a filter, then knowledge can be also defective because one's knowledge can be defective. Somebody can explain something that is wrong is right because of their limited knowledge, and this is something that keeps happening. I think if we want to put a filter, it can be if something that you do is beneficial for yourself and others, if it makes you more whole and more peaceful and more loving, it's a good filter. If it separates you from others, if especially spiritually speaking, if it gives you a sense of being better, sense of ego, then it is separating you from God. Because ultimately, even the story of Satan, he wanted to say, I am better than God. And that is, to me, representative of ego. that separates us from God.
How about being better than yourself?
There is no being better than yourself.
Than yourself yesterday.
There is no yesterday in my philosophy. You can only look at yourself in this moment and see where you can improve, and you improve it. But if you
Improving is being better.
yeah, if you look at it that way from this perspective of time, I got too spiritual. But yes, you can say there was a version of me yesterday, but as you know, time doesn't really exist. I cannot control myself not get too spiritual and philosophical. But what is a good life, and how can you achieve it, especially using these philosophies, Spinoza and whatever else? Because obviously, unless you evolve to some sort of enlightened level or something, you cannot know if there is afterlife or all those things, as you said. But like for our day-to-day life here, how can these philosophies help us become more?
So the idea of oneness is realizing that you're not in a constant battle against yourself, against God, against Satan. You're here to exist as part of a major existence, as a part of a major function. And, you know, purpose and will, let's talk about that because this fits in there. A lot of people think that the universe was created for a purpose. You know, we have purpose as human, but we also have shortages, we have voids, we have lacks. In order to complete those shortages, we have to get purposes and have goals. But the universe doesn't exist for a purpose. God does not create for a purpose.
How do we know that?
By intuitive understanding, my understanding is that God does not lack anything because it's not assembled. It's not made out of many components. I have many desires because I have many shortcomings. I have many needs. And I have to be nourished. There are two things in the universe. One that is nourishes and one that needs to be nourished. One that needs to be sustained. I'm the sustained part. I'm the created part. But the one that creates me or extends me cannot by definition have those shortcomings to need to be sustained, you know, because then it won't be the creator or the sustainer. So the sustainer is not made out of multiple complex parts outside of itself. You know, I'm made out of outside of myself. Flesh, this, that. But before God, there can't be anything else, right? Is the only thing that eternally exists. So nobody has assembled God. Nobody has put components of God like a computer, put brain here, put heart here. This is oneness of God, right? That God is not made of different parts.
But from the perspective of looking at life not from God's eye and considering everything that is perfect and everything is will of God, when you look at God universe from your limited self perspective, a lot of spiritual traditions might say something loosely like the purpose of life is to know God or to become free from suffering. Is that not true?
I don't believe in that because God is one. And I have to emphasize on that, you know, in our religion, Judaism, you say it twice a day, one in the morning, one at night. And if you're super religious, 3 times, one before going. And if you're ultra religious, 4 times, because you put on 2 sets of tefillin and you recite it twice. But we say Adonai Echad, right? What does Yahweh being one means? If you say it's one, it can be counted as one, then you literally saying heresy. Because you're saying you can define God and there's one. You count it. You look at other Jewish texts like Patach Eliyahu says he's one, velo bechushban, but not in counting. When we say God is one, we don't mean in count. We don't count God because then you're also making it limited. Rather meaning that God is united. Whatsoever is in itself, is in the universe, is from the oneness of God. So the oneness of God indicates that God is not made out of multiple components, desires, imagination, confusions, none of those. And purpose and will pertains to things that have those shortcomings. You know, I need to make clothing because I don't have fur. We need glasses because I don't have a perfect vision. Or we can't hunt like an eagle does at night or night vision. We don't have those. So we have a lot of shortcomings. We have a lot of goals for them. We have a lot of purposes. God doesn't have any purpose. God has a function. If God were to act for a purpose, that purpose be superior to God. Because that purpose can make God come to action. But God doesn't come to action because something compels it to. Rather, God is the compeller, is the causer. Therefore, God acts for function. God has a function. God doesn't have a purpose. Should I have purposes? Yes, as many as I can, to give my life a meaning, to give myself some sort of satisfaction, to complete my shortcomings. Absolutely. Have a purpose that's suited for your life. If you want to dedicate a purpose for outside of life, by all means. It doesn't break my leg or pick my pocket. As long as you don't do neither of those things, have whatever belief you want, have whatever purpose, have whatever goal you want. To me, the purpose for my own life is to die well. You know, a lot of people say, I live another day, but we're actually dying every day. So I want that time that I'm dying to be well spent. And by the time I actually go, I have done enough good things to be good, to die as a good person. Okay. Because, you know, becoming a good person is not an overnight thing. You have to get rid of confusion. You have to get rid of the trash. You have to remove all the dust to get to the gold. Ultimately, if you die as a good person, the chances are good. You lived a good life. You were a good person. You extended good like a tree that gives sweet fruits, gives shade. You did your part in nature. And if there is an afterlife, I lived a good person according to my understanding, and I'm happy to die. Another thing, being good. When we realize our own potential, that's bliss. When we negate our potential, you know, somebody wants to run but have an injured knee, that's pain because they're limited. They cannot express their potential. Somebody wants to think but they can't because they're stressed out. That's pain. That's limitation of potential. So to me, anytime I get to express any of those potential that God or nature have given me, and I can see the value that I bring, that remedies my pain, that remedies my disease of awareness, that I know I'm dying. Mm-hmm. When I feel I have done my part in the whole of nature, that is blessedness for me.
A couple of things that I want to discuss as a follow-up. First of all, we're talking about getting connected to our conscious intuition and then knowing what's good. There are a lot of people that don't necessarily agree that love, unity, and so on, that's the highest thing for me. They firmly believe that my good life is to make as much as money, even if it costs lying or even putting another person in harm's way and so on, and they feel okay about it. What do you say, shedding some light on that wrong mindset to help people understand that that is not the right way to live and what is the consequences of it? Because religion can give an answer. I can also say, yeah, everything is karma, but somebody might say, I don't believe in that bullshit. I don't think there is any karma. There is no purpose. I can do whatever I want. What is wrong with that mindset?
So I feel like pursuit of money, there's nothing wrong with it. Is one of the most important things you can do. Pursuit of commerce, you know, growing your business, helping a community, you know, when you help people have good jobs, and that's also a great thing. But I 100% agree with you. When we kill ourselves for that goal, when the greed is unfiltered desire for survival, when we do too much greed, you know, when we lose family time, when we lose our self-care or we lose morals and we proceed in a way to mass richness, then it's not serving our life. That is not for pleasure. It's harming other people. There is no way you can harm other people and be harmless yourself. Eventually that harm will come to you, whether it comes to you at night, it disturbs your sleep, or whether you put your conscience to sleep and law comes after you, or whether someone else does the same thing to you. Best life, live it peaceful, live it lawful. In absence of religion, law is extremely important. Promotion of law for the society. We either got to be promoting lawfulness and following the law or promoting strict religion. We need those two for the society. So, yeah, you steal money, chances are you will eventually, it's not karma. It's not guaranteed that you did something bad will happen to you. But it's 100% guaranteed. You did something bad, you become a bad person because you know it, your conscience knows it, you view yourself like that. And what does a bad person do? They do more bad things and more bad things and more bad things. And they compile a life that's surrounded with bad things. It's not a straight path.
But there are people who would justify doing bad things, like the mullahs back in Iran, even doing evil things, justify it in the name of God or whatever, and they feel great about it. How can they awaken to this truth that they are out of alignment with that wellness of even for themselves?
I don't think there's any hope. The belief is deeply
To
rooted, and belief could blind you, and there is no argument that will make them change. They don't believe they're doing bad. They believe they're doing
Yeah.
work of God. They've been nominated by God, and I don't see any hope for them. I don't think our podcast will center won't change them.
My next follow-up question is, first we talked about every human being is ultimately looking for God, even unconsciously. And that brings me to mind this poem from the great mystic Sufi Hafiz, which says, همه کس طالب یارند چه هوشیار چه مست همه جا خانه عشق است چه مسجد چه کنش, which means everybody is seeking the beloved, whether consciously or unconsciously. And that is also the philosophy of the Eastern religions, that ultimately, to put it in a very simple way, you want to experience pleasantness, that heaven within yourself. And you can either get closer to that state of pleasantness or get further away from it. Obviously, when you do those things that most religions say don't do, when you have greed, when you have anger, when you experience those emotions, and when you do bad things, you get more complicated, you get more psychological issues, and you get further away from knowing yourself. And when you do good things, especially loving things, forgiveness and love, whether it's like a connection with your version of God that you understand, or being devoted to a cause or something, that love in many traditions being known as God itself, actually, that brings you closer to God. So we can say that ultimately you do good things because it feels good and makes you more pleasant. Obviously, majority of people believe that there is nothing sweeter than being in love, because that's a state that you become very content and peaceful and you feel great, and you stop seeking happiness in all the small pleasures and being desperate. What do you think about that?
I think that you're right on. The duality that there is, that some things are bad and it inherently bad. Like my desires are completely bad. Well, your desires for sex, which is the biggest lamentation of religions, right? It's prohibited, but wait a few years, we'll give it to you in Olam Haba, in the next world. When you die, we'll give you a few more. Why? Why do you do that? The desire for sex is part of our evolution, right? We evolved, and through this, we survive through the replication. It's God's process for replication. It's not evil in you, it's in you. You have to learn to be one with it, transform it, control it, and have dominion over your utensils and your vessels. And ultimately, that makes you a person of control, person of your master of your own body. So nothing in you, I think what we're all saying here, nothing in you is evil. Nothing in you needs to be condemned or destroyed. You need to understand yourself, be one with your nature, and transform your nature to the best of your potentials and ability.
One thing that keeps coming up for me to ask is that a lot of people would argue and say, so you say everything is God's will. Why would God want to have rapists around or suicide bombers and all those other nasty things that are going on?
I don't believe everything is God's will, right? I believe everything is God's function. Okay. And there's a process. I don't believe that God manages the events. God expresses itself through existence. Reality is God. So a person that's created with a certain deficiency in their body, let's say, nature has seen that form possible to be created. And as I said, God has no state of potential. If it's possible for God, it is the process. God has created everything in every degree of perfection. A question that occupied my mind, why isn't there just one form? Let God to create one thing. You don't need to create all these things. But it's not a question of choice. God is infinite. And if it was just one form, nothing changed ever. If the forms never changed, then you can't see existence because it'll all just be one flat line. How could you differentiate existence? So God exists in formless ways. A baby that's defective in the womb. Those are the conditions, and yet God has seen it that it's possible to exist. And that variety makes existence possible, especially life. We need that variety that makes, somebody can do this talent, somebody can do this talent, somebody can sew shoes, somebody can speak. So nature has provided everything that it needs to have that system going. A baby that's defective in their body or their mentality, it is part of God's nature. God doesn't hold any potential. That existence was possible, therefore it was necessary. That form is necessary part of God. It's like saying this building shouldn't have that window here.
Why would God want to create disabled children?
God never wants anything because want indicates, again, a purpose for a lack. God exists necessarily. Meaning God didn't decide that, tomorrow I'm going to start existing. It's God's nature to always exist. There is only one such nature that we all belong to, eternal existence. God's nature is exist, like you said also. This is funny because Spinoza has the same thing. Nature of God is existence is the nature of God. But you had two more things that you added, blissfulness and consciousness. So existence is the nature of God. Again, it's the nature of God. It's the function of God. It's not God calculates and then let us build a universe tomorrow. Let us build planet Earth today. It is all part of God's existence. Every matter, it's already conditioned. Every atom, every particle is already conditioned, and they have a definite condition. And it's not God that says, God acts by primary forces, meaning, proton and nuclear and, what are the things? Proton?
Neutron, proton, and whatever.
Neutron, proton, and
nucleus, whatever.
The way they function together, right?
Yeah.
God doesn't say, what if this happens and then there's a Hiroshima or Nagasaki? That's not God's concern. God acts by primary, because if God was to act by end results, then there will be infinite outcomes and God will be obliged for a purpose.
Okay.
Go get something. But God is not going to get something. Existence is the function of God.
But what guides the situation that somebody is born disabled or poor or Hitler, for example?
The material status of them.
What
the
is
social,
the person?
The social causal chain. There is a chain that you can track, and we shouldn't be neglectful of those chains or scientific processes.
How about the things that you don't have any control over, like how you were born, where you were born?
Exactly. We don't have control over
what decides that?
The natural course of existence, the other conditions that predated our existence.
What do you mean, like?
Other conditions, like gravity is a major condition, right? And it causes things to move or become to whatever shape, or other laws of science or other laws of nature.
Okay, but why would the conditions, whatever it is, decide somebody to born in a very good, luxurious
Conditions don't decide. Conditions are.
Okay.
Conditions are as a result of previous conditions.
I'm just speaking from the perspective of one person that might be born with a terminal illness and seeing another person very healthy in a luxury life and say, who decided that I be born in this messed up life?
No, nature demanded you as a necessary possibility. And because you're a possibility, you became a necessity to nature.
This mindset, even though looking at it from a specific point of view might be good. I personally choose to believe that there are souls that are same as God, but in a limited way, in this dimension of life, going through whatever we call reincarnation or karma. And then it is because of our past experiences in different bodies that this is decided, because I don't have any other way to fairly
Yeah, you do
explain.
materialism. You saying that, oh, it cannot make sense, therefore it must be so. But like religions, you're neglecting the material course of nature, which is the real existence of God, which is something you can actually study. This is how God exists. This is how God's universe is in function. The function doesn't need to explain itself to our intellect. We have to understand the function. You want to philosophize about the function, by all means.
No, I'm just logically thinking as a representative of many people who would have the same question, that if God is, I don't know if you believe in that, if God is fair or loving or whatever,
No, God
why
is not
would,
fair.
what is it?
God doesn't love us. God, as we indicated, loves itself and every extension that comes from itself. But individuals can love God, but can't expect God to love them. God doesn't have a heart, doesn't have emotions, doesn't have eyes, doesn't have ears. Let me correct that. God has billions and billions of ears and billions of eyes, but we are the eyes and the ears, and we are the hearts and the emotions.
Why would God decide to not have eyes in one kid and have eyes in another
God doesn't
kid?
decide. You're right. God doesn't decide.
What
We
is-
make decisions.
But
God doesn't make
I
decisions.
didn't decide to be
God's
born.
existence is by necessity, again and again. God's existence is not a decision. Therefore, this compartment you're looking for in God, that's decision making, does not exist. God doesn't judge by imagination and imagine the final outcomes. Meaning, when two molecules meet one another, they already know by definition what they need to do. By condition, they already know what to do. So, what is your expectation? That God overrules itself over the molecules and atoms and overrides itself? No. God exists through these things, and existence is. The idea that God needs to be an Elohim, a judge who overrides, who intervenes with things. Oh, I'm existing as the river going this direction, but let me just override my nature and go in that direction.
So nature just randomly decides that wants to be.
Nature exists according to its condition. It's not random.
What is
It's
the
not
cause?
for cause, it's its own function.
Is there cause?
You pour the water, what is the cause? It drops.
I'm the cause.
No, gravity, the cause that pulls it down, right?
Well, that's arguable that gravity is the real cause, or I am the real cause, but let's not get too philosophical.
Okay, well, you're both the cause, let's say.
All I'm saying is.
But why does it pour down? Because it's the nature of gravity to pull things down.
Yes.
So you want to say that in some instances, the nature of things shouldn't be the nature of things, rather should be the nature.
What is the system that decides somebody be born blind and somebody with eyes?
Follow the biology explanation. To me, there is no reason behind that. There's a deficiency in the sperm. There's a deficiency in the egg. The mother does something. There's a genetic. We cannot neglect or negate the causal chain of material event and hope that there is a higher power, because the higher power is the process.
Okay.
When we say that, it's not oneness. It's separating from oneness and saying that the process is a mundane process that could change arbitrarily, and our ideals, such as kindness, fairness, love, are the primary things that God should conform to those. But God is going to be like, oh, I don't conform to nothing. God conforms to its own nature. And part of being obedient, the real obedience we need, the real obedience we need is that. To understand that we are part of this nature, and nature really runs itself. Our free will is not a kingdom in another kingdom. Our ideals are only good for our behavior and our society. And it's silliness to wish that our ideals become something God conforms to. That's part of getting rid of the dust to see the gold. We have ideals, we have perfections, and then we say, oh, the one that has always eternally existed should conform to these ideas. But if God ever conformed to these ideas, it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't create the planet.
So there is no question of whether nature or God being fair or not fair if somebody is born blind.
Nature is fair to the extent that they don't suffer the way you think they suffer. Meaning,
I am
right,
also nature.
absolutely. But if you have never seen, you're not suffering as much as a person that has seen and then lost vision, right? Like an animal never sits down and says, oh, if I could walk or talk like this human, how much better my life would be. That imagination doesn't exist. They're very obedient to the form they are. And we have to, once we get rid of that desire that nature has to conform to us, we don't take things personal. It is part of chain and process and law of nature that is far greater than me. And I'm so much more smaller to it. To think that God is calculating the laws of universe based on what would happen to me. That's a real selfishness to think that the order of nature, the law of science, the behavior of atoms, they should revolve around me to reward me or my here. No, God has its functions, has its conditions, and we have to conform to those.
I mean, there are people have different ideas, different.
No one is ever satisfied with that answer. When you eternalize acceptance, obedience, real Islam, obedient to the law of nature, to the goddamn law that's very physical, do not wish to change that law. This is the law that we have to be obedient. And so far as that law has allowed me to change, I'm going to experience change and I'm going to make it better.
I like your attitude towards that you don't complain or say, why the hell this is happening? It's nature, it's just what it is. A lot of people choose, especially in Eastern systems, and even concept of karma and reincarnation exists in almost all religions, that they like to believe, again, it's a belief, we cannot prove it or anything, but that the reason that somebody is born in this place and time and with these limitations or in poverty or a luxury life is because of their own past reincarnations and karmas. Anyways, whether that's true or not.
If somebody believes that, they need to believe it, and I encourage them to continue believing. Because sometimes the belief is there to conceal a pain or something we can't really face.
And it gives you more sense of responsibility, I believe, that you say, I am responsible for what I choose and what I do, and I need to experience the consequences of that action.
Even in another life.
Maybe.
Yeah, I have no way of saying that it's not true, or I've for sure investigated and I can tell I'm not reincarnated.
Yeah, I mean,
As a matter of fact, I believe that every part of my body will be reincarnated, and some bugs will eat this meat, and some bugs will eat this part, and some tree will grow out of me. So my material sense is all going to be recycled. I don't know if my thoughts and ideas are going to continue aside from what I write down or teach to my children, or through this podcast I say it over. But yeah, I don't believe in reincarnation more than passing on children.
As we get close to the end of the podcast, I want to ask you the final question and say how all these philosophies, whatever you discuss and maybe whatever I discuss, but the question is to you, can be translated in our daily lives to make us better.
I would say get rid of the dualities and the feelings of being made from separate universes and a battle, and accept the entire universe as one unit, accept yourself as a part of it, accept your limitations, but at the same time recognize that your potentials are there and you're a God experience. And the more you maximize your potential, the more blessedness you bring to yourself.
Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you,
And
Isaac.
for people who want to know more about what you teach, where they can find you.
I learn. I don't teach much. I learn and try to express it. Existiology, my channel on Instagram, which hasn't been very active, but if your podcast gets good views, we get a few likes, I'll put out a book on 1 minute oneness. I'll publish it in your honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you.